How many androids does it take to remove a light bulb? None. Androids can see in the dark. This planet is inhabited by nearly 7 billion human beings. Each and every person is allotted a certain duration within which to live out their biological life. As I examined human beings closer and closer, I began to discover some anomalies in human behavior. Coupled with my own extensive research into the technological basis for existence, I realized that these anomalies were pointing to a redefinition of some humans. Verily, I concluded that those anomalies in behavior were consistent with machine behavior, and that these machine-like people were better described as androids, and these androids were living among us. To discuss the size and weight of this discussion, I determined that I would require some elemental proof, rather than discuss a farmer or a schoolgirl, because these subjects have little influence on society. I chose to identify and highlight prominent people. All of my chosen subjects are significant political players in the U.S. government. This does not exclude other governments, nor does it suggest any negative connotation to the United States governing body. I have only identified my best examples given my limited resources.
I believe the position of the United States Chamber of Commerce is a solid position.
We can expect a multitude of similar cases in every part of the world. That is to say, androids are not just U.S. citizens, and neither are they just politicians. Again, the idea of inserting an advanced android being into an existential civilization is a very profound concept, and it is done with a lot of care and attention. As you will discover, these people did not crash land their spaceship, nor did they time travel into this world. They were inserted many years ago.
But the Republican moderates struck an agreement.
To suggest that an android is inserted is to suggest that another party, unidentified, is working behind the scenes. It is also suggesting that this unidentified party is advanced enough to not only create a synthetic human, but also can program it to influence society, all without society noticing their manipulations. Given the quality of my examples, I estimate that this technology is 1,000 years ahead of human science today. It is so advanced that you have not noticed the android on the screen. Let's observe. The white-haired man in the center is a synthetic person. Our first clue is his rate of blinking. He is blinking so fast that it is comparable to REM sleep, rapid eye movement. Our second clue is his relative position. He is always situated to the left of the speaker, behind them. Our third clue is his pattern of influence. When he is behind the speaker, he blinks repeatedly. When he is away, he stops blinking.
How much all of us work together to produce legislation, which I think will go a long, long way to meet the needs here to turn this recession around. This bill will create about 3.5 million jobs. We're showing to them that people who've lost jobs.
Our fourth clue is his energy signature. From my own personal observation, he is neither human, nor is he non-human or star person in energy signature. He is also not a clone. Given the lack of options, we are led to think he is synthetic of a very advanced nature. Finally, our fifth clue is the general observation. A synthetic being is a machine, a transmitter-receiver, much like a mobile phone. A synthetic device is employed at times of influence. This is a high-profile press conference and a good place to insert an android's influence. To understand his blinking, we refer to our computer. Whenever you insert a DVD into the drive bay or you plug in a USB drive, you'll notice a blinking light as the computer reads the data. Fast blinking means data reading or transmission. The white-haired android blinks rapidly because he is transmitting data. To whom? To the speaker, so as to ensure the speaker speaks on topic. So each speaker in turn receives his data transmission. This points to a very disturbing notion. If the white-haired android is transmitting data, and if there are many androids, then who is managing the android mainframe? Who is the puppeteer? Or more importantly, where are they?
In demand between this year and next year, then we have to backfill this economy with a fiscal stimulus approach. Secondly, it is important to make sure that every provision that is included in this stimulus package will be designed and geared towards creating jobs and making those necessary investments so that we have the tax relief that's so critical to low-income and middle-income America. We've preserved the President's signature item, Make Work Tax Credit, the alternative minimum tax, preserving jobs and investments in small business. They're going to be the lifeline to our economic reversal.
The blinking, the pattern of movement, the relative position, the importance of the event all lead us to redefine example X, a white-haired man, as a living android. Therefore, where are his builders? Are they in a higher dimension? Are they inside the white-haired man for the duration of the conference and then step away until needed? Now, androids, like computers, are built for different purposes. This white-haired man is positioned on the left rear. Now, did you notice the android on the right rear?
So I'm very pleased to have been a part of this. I know that there's a lot of differences, both sides of the aisle, both the House and the Senate, and even with the President. But the time
you didn't notice him because he is not blinking. In fact, he is staring. He has an almost catatonic demeanor, quite unusual and out of place. Yet he is wholly aware of his environs. He is not mentally handicapped.
Senator Lieberman.
Thanks, Senator Reid. Working together under Harry Reid's patient, usually soft, but occasionally quite tough leadership, we came a long way in a relatively short time to achieve something.
Now, the synthetic person who was in a relative position behind the previous speakers, who was influencing what they said and the topic of their discussion, now comes himself to the forefront and finishes off the audience manipulation. He has carefully steered the conversation and prepped the audience in order to receive his glory-filled statements in order to secure the deal and to win whatever presentation they're trying to do.
Turnaround for the American economy. It will protect or create millions of jobs. It will put billions of dollars into the pockets of hard-working American people so that they can go out and spend it and grow the economy. This, in my opinion, is a turning point. We're not going to get back to where our economy was overnight, but I think this represents the beginning of turning our economy around and leading to a better day full of opportunity for the American people. I was proud to work with this group, proud to be part of it. Without the three Republican colleagues, the Senate could not have come to the table. Without a great spirit of compromise from the White House, the House, and the Senate, we would not be able to announce this agreement today. Thank you.
So the synthetic person was employed here in this manner to steer policy in a certain but mistaken direction. The fact that their guaranteed economic plan failed miserably also is another clue that this was a careful audience manipulation by a synthetic group of beings, well hidden behind society. We're going to play the press conference now in different speeds, so that you can see what is really going on. Again, pay attention to the two white-haired individuals behind the speaker. The three of them in a triangular position remind us of a pattern used by military jets. There is the lead jet saddled with one or two other jets as protection. In our case, we have a speaker and two androids. The android on the left is transmitting data because he is blinking. The android on the right is not blinking. What is he doing? He may be providing some kind of energy shielding. These two men behind the speaker are unusual cases. The man to your right is extremely unusual. In fact, he is quite obviously unusual.
We all understand the process hasn't been easy, but passage of a responsible answer to the crisis is now in sight. I want to take this time to express my appreciation to my counterpart, Senator McConnell. We worked together for the good of the country. I am so...
Once again, we find the man that was situated on the right rear, in your viewing to your left. The glaring, quiet, non-blinking, elderly politician. Here he is again, in the same position as an earlier press conference. Again we have an important press conference. And soon we will see him yet again in an even more important press conference. Notice his demeanor. Notice his position. If you could measure his energy signature, you would measure that he is not in the spectrum of normal biological existence. Your eyes, of course, will deceive you.
Of course, the work of Senator Conrad, who is our money man on the Democratic side, has been exemplary. Senator McConnell.
Well, thank you, Harry. This has been the Senate at its finest. In the years that I've been here, I can't recall a single time where, in this close proximity to an election, both sides have risen above the temptation to engage in partisan game playing, if you will, to address an issue of magnitude, great magnitude. The fact that Senator Obama and Senator McCain were here tonight and also played a constructive role in this process is also quite significant. You know, one of the things that I run into all the time in my state and across the country is people say, why can't you folks ever get along and do anything together for the country? Well, I wish we could do that more often, but we clearly have demonstrated in the toughest possible situation, 5 weeks from an election, that we can come together and address a major crisis. As my friend, the majority leader said,
here he is shielding the most powerful person in the world. Notice the uncanny look, the catatonic glare behind these large eyes. There's a very busy machine. The difficulty in discussing androids is that they are multidimensional creations. Many of their interactions and influences are invisible. For example, they can send thoughts to a person. Obviously, you can't see that on camera. Or in this case, they are shielding a very important person. Most people cannot see those energy effects. In our case, we are not sure what kind of shielding is going on. It may just be a mind shield.
Whether or not this adds to our deficit, now suddenly you're ignoring what the CBO says. Finally, we agree on reforms that will make coverage affordable for 30 million Americans who don't have it. Adds to our deficit, now suddenly you're ignoring what the CBO says.
Now you'll notice another clue, a little more proof to my unique observations. None of this has ever been done before in public, so doubt and disbelief is expected. The speaker is speaking. Notice when the speaker changes topic or paragraph. Clearly the speaker shifted his thinking. Now remember that this second android did not like to blink, unlike the first. But notice that the timing of his blinking with the shift in the speaker's topic.
Finally, we agree on reforms that will make coverage affordable for 30 million Americans.
Let's watch that again.
Adds to our deficit. Now suddenly you're ignoring what the CBO says. Finally, we agree on reforms that will make coverage affordable for 30 million.
He blinks before speaker shifts. Let's put this scene in context. This is the most powerful person in the world. He is protected by the CIA and the security forces. Everyone on his team is security checked. Yet we have this catatonic, big-eyed, uncanny fellow on his right. A similar position he had in the other conference. Isn't it strange for this to go unnoticed by the Secret Service? It isn't strange if this is typical. It isn't strange if there are more of them. It isn't strange if the CIA can't tell the difference, or if they are involved. But to you and me, this is highly unusual. Even if he wasn't an android, it is highly unusual. We have now seen two examples of synthetic people in action. Obviously, they are excellent human recreations. They look and appear human. If I had not told you, you would never think twice. But these examples, these subjects of observation, are synthetic. what I call android beings, machine people. Of course, since they are not made of metallic parts, we would have to redefine what an android is. Make your own definition. These two people, significant political players influencing very powerful politicians, are artificial. The first question we raise is this: if androids are influencing the highest levels of government, then the government is not in charge. If the government is not in charge, who is? And whoever is in charge can operate on a dimensional frequency that appears invisible. Both these men are in their 60s. Were these androids then created during World War II, while the public was distracted by a war? The android builders were inserting synthetic human-looking people into the highest levels of power and programming them to influence society at large. Or were there androids from the early 1900s? Have there been androids among us for centuries? Here's a more interesting question. If an advanced android can be made to look and appear human, could it be that humans evolved as some original android form? If there are people here that are 1,000 years ahead of humanity, and they can build human androids, then could they or others have built androids tens of thousands of years ago? That would mean that humans are part of an android legacy and simply forgot their origins. Every android is unique because each having identifiable clues that give their true class away. Even at high speed, you can notice the man with white hair staring, his eyes not moving, while the speaker's eyes are moving naturally, as is his head, as he proceeds through his speech. But we can notice that he blinks very little, if at all, throughout this speech. A very long speech, of which this is only a part of. This is one of the most powerful women in the United States, until very recently. You'll notice that she is positioned on the left rear behind an important speaker. You'll also notice that she is blinking. If my observations are accurate and if my technical intuition is clear, if both these are relatively intact, then what does it mean? It means that there are people here who are at least 1,000 years more advanced than you. These people can synthetically produce DNA and program it to grow a human-looking person. If they can create synthetic humans, then they have the technological capacity to build starships and to time travel. If the US government has at least 3 androids, all different, then we can expect more in other nations, and we can expect that these androids can be programmed and reprogrammed to influence policy. Who then is truly running the world? Obviously not the people. This says something very powerful about the human species, because if people can be synthetically produced, then we can expect that they've been in production since the beginning. It also means that life needs to be redefined. If a modern-day android woman gave birth to an android baby, that would make the baby in question uniquely advanced. In fact, that child might not be socially compatible with lesser advanced people. That android child may be identified as having a disorder rather than being identified as a superior. If you do not fit the norm, you're abnormal and have a disorder, even though you may be more advanced. Whatever the case may be, whatever you yourself perceive, all of this and more has to be viewed in the context of a world, a people with androids among us. What this says about humanity is that somewhere along our convoluted history, we were made to forget our android heritage, our artificial makeup, our machine qualities.
And yesterday I held a fiscal summit where I pledged to cut the deficit in half by the end of my first term in office. My administration has also begun to go line by line through the federal budget in order to eliminate wasteful and ineffective programs. As you can imagine, there's a process that will take some time, but we have already identified $2 trillion in savings over the next decade. In this budget, we will end education programs that don't work and end direct payments to large agribusiness that don't need them. We'll eliminate.
The applause for this president would be short-lived because of all the stimulus packages and the bailouts and the plans to reduce unemployment. All of these would fail within the next 18 months. So we can see now that we are in the future, we can see in the past how the use of synthetic people to influence society to create a false sense of a future which would not succeed is very effective, in the sense that synthetic power can influence and shape society when in fact their manipulation is false and creates a false sense of the future.
By finally ending the tax breaks for corporations that ship our jobs over.
When we speed up the video of the woman, we notice her eyes are blinking much faster than usual, in fact quite similar to the white-haired man in the previous sequences. So this is a woman now, not a man, a woman, a distinguished, powerful politician in the United States who is blinking, who is situated to the left rear of a powerful speaker and is influencing society without society realizing it. The inclusion of a synthetic being in a life structure such as this is a very exotic idea. It is an extremely exotic idea because it suggests that A, there is a level of technology that appears to be organic, appears to be biological, right? There appears to be a level of technology that is, for all intents and purposes, biological in appearance. Now, for those of you who have seen the white-haired android videos 1 and 2, you will have some reference here because you have there three very clear, I think, very clear examples of androids or synthetic beings in society. And I chose those three because they were very prominent people in high positions. They were in the on Capitol Hill in the American government. Now, you probably recognize these faces. If not, you know who they are. If I had chosen some other people in some obscure area, you might have a hard time believing me, for one. You might not want to believe me, but for two, you would have nothing, there would be no importance to it. You wouldn't be able to relate to it. Because, so what? There's an android working on some farm somewhere. Who cares? So the challenge was for me was to find something that provided some evidence on one hand, and two, it gave you some perspective on what's going on who is running the world. Because that's essentially the problem, right? Not only do you need to be able to learn to see these synthetic beings within society, which is a whole new idea. I mean, for the most part, for most people, they cannot see it. And it might take years for them to distinguish between one type of being and another type of being. I mean, we still haven't gotten over the ETs, right? We still cannot tell who is an ET, what is a star being, and what is a human being. Of course, I'm introducing something even more, a synthetic being, an android, but an android that is a reinterpretation of the word android. It is a magnification of the human science known as androidism. Android science, robotics, AI. Those people you saw in the video were people. By all intents and purposes, they were people. You see them now. You see these people. These are people, what we call human beings. What I'm saying is they are synthetic people, they are androids, and they are living within society, and that there are many more. So please don't stop there and say, oh, there's only 3. There are many, many more. And you have to think that whenever you have a reality, whenever you build a world, you want to build a world that you can nurture, that you can teach, that you can ensure moves forward. So within that world, you're going to have characters who are more advanced, who are smart, who are connected to very high authorities, such as heavenly authorities, divine authorities, cosmic authorities, godly beings. Why do you want that? Because when you build an environment and populate it with beings, you want to make sure that those beings will remain within your network and will evolve. I mean, to think that a God creates all beings equal, leaves them there with a few spears and fur jackets, it doesn't make sense. Because where's the smart people, right? Where do you get the teacher from? Where do you get the divine people from? Where do you get the spiritual people from? So over the centuries, over the millennia, we have realized that there are spiritual people, there are wise people, that there are prodigies, that there are teachers, there are farmers, there are laborers, there are assassins, and there are shippers, and so forth. And at the very bottom you have politicians and lawyers. That was a joke. We have termed spiritual people as being people with more knowledge of a God. But what if those spiritual people were actually genetically different? What if wise people were genetically different? What if we inserted a certain group of people that were technologically different? But you'd want to do so that they appear to be indistinguishable from the local population. Because if they were metallic skinned, you'd have trouble with society, because society would reject that as a foreign body, as a monster, as a etc., etc. So there are these beings in the American government, and it might take you some time to really believe me, to understand, to see, because it did take me a lot of work, a lot of effort, and there was a lot of resistance. There are a lot of people who don't like me, because this stuff is very advanced. This stuff is more top secret than UFOs and ETs. So there are these synthetic people in society, and it is perfectly natural. From my perspective, it is natural, because I have seen so many of them. There's no way it's an accident. By the same token, human science is incapable of creating such beings, right? Human science cannot create these synthetic androids that appear to be human. Therefore, who created them? Well, obviously, a non-human, because it is a non-human science that is much more advanced than a human science. So obviously, non-humans created them. One of the gentlemen, the lady, are in their 60s, right? That means that these people were created in the early 40s. That means that they had to have been designed prior to the early 40s and late 30s. So you have a technology of creating androids, of inserting androids into the human population that has been in existence for at least 70 years. But we could even go back 100 years and say that there were more of these androids inserted into society, indistinguishable from a human being, and that there were many models and many kinds with many features, functions, and abilities, so that one might appear one way and one might appear another way. And in doing so, there would be a specific reason for doing so, and that would be to ensure that the human being, that the human evolution, a more explicit path. And it's windy. So what you have here is a very it's a very interesting thing, because you have here non-humans monitoring, supporting, and assisting human evolution on very, very advanced levels. Now, the androids are physical. They are in the real world. They're not multidimensional, at least as we can see. They speak English for the most part and other languages, but they are physical beings that they interact with other human beings. So the argument is always, where's the proof? This is very high-level proof. Please look at it. Please consider it.
But in the legislature, you don't get everything you want. This bill has a very substantial component of tax cuts. The Republican moderates were able to see to it that more than $100 billion was cut from this program. Now, there are people who would like to spend less. Some would like to spend nothing. I believe the position of the United States